So just so I understand, the purpose of the amendment is to strike the provision that would permit the county commissioners court from, inviting the newly created border BPU to their jurisdiction to coordinate with them?
So not so much coordinate, to approve or disapprove on whether they operate. We just passed a pre-exemption bill a couple weeks ago. I'm afraid that in some of these counties, they'll say that they don't want the Border Protection Unit there, but the people of the United States of America and of Texas deserve a quality Border Protection Unit.
Do you think law enforcement that comes into an environment where they're not working collaboratively with local officials and other local county commissioners oversee the sheriff's department in every one of their county, do they not?
They do.
Do you think it is wise, or do you think it is fruitful to have law enforcement coming into a community that is not coordinating and collaborating with local officials?
I think they'll still coordinate, and I think they'll still collaborate. But the problem is going to be when we have a county commissioner.
So forcing the local government at the law enforcement level to, it doesn't sound very collaborative to me. Collaboration is usually coordinating. In fact, this bill, whether, wherever people stand on it, seems to be pushing an effort to make sure that courts, prosecutors, law enforcement at all levels are working together. You're familiar with the idea of fusion centers and things like that, right?
I am, but what you're implying is that if I remove this, that no collaboration takes place. I think it still does. The provision exists to try to exempt them and stop them from certain counties. There's no other reason that would exist.
Wouldn't you agree with me? What the bill builds in by asking our local elected officials to openly engage in this conversation is finding a space for all of the folks to come together and have that conversation in a public dialogue. I think it's important. I think it's important for the public back home to be involved in that dialogue. And as a new law enforcement entity, as someone from a community that has a bazillion law enforcement organizations working in my backyard, and by the way, they work very well together. They coordinate. They meet on regular basis.
And they do that without the Commissioner's Court having to approve it.
The Commissioner's Court is very well involved in all of those.
But they don't have to approve
and
or
they
disapprove.
designate folks to go be their liaison for these purposes. Not including them in that decision-making process is hostile.
I disagree.
put it to you, it is a hostile effort. And when you're trying to promote, don't you think the better way to promote collaboration is to bring people to the table and not say, we're just going to cut your seat out of the table, whether you want it or not, whether you want to talk about it or not, we're going to be here. How effective do you think that'll be?
So currently, DPS doesn't have to get permission from the Commissioner's Court to be where they're at, nor does the National Guard, and they're collaborative and they're working. The only reason I believe this provision exists is to stop them from operating in that county. There's no other reason for it because they will be collaborative. They are right now. DPS is. This new unit
How much of a collaborative environment do you think you're creating when the bill as is creates an avenue by which public participation at the local level can be involved, and you remove that?
I think currently,
don't you think the message to folks back home, at least in my community, will be, we don't want you involved in this process?
No, I think they're going to think it's exactly like it currently is. DPS is operating in our backyard.
It's not exactly how it currently is because it's a brand new unit of law enforcement. So I do disagree with them. But this is a very different effort, and if it wasn't a very different effort, it wouldn't be necessary. And so for communities like mine, who, by the way, regardless of what some people may think, have a vested interest in a secure and functional border and want to be a productive partner in that conversation. I mean, do you think that a county like El Paso doesn't want a secure border?
I think there are some counties that either do or will
Well, I'm asking specifically. I care about El Paso County. Do you think my county doesn't want a secure border?
I don't know, and that's not what this is about. This is about now or in the future.
Well, you're talking about taking local authority away.
Do you think my county now or in the future there will be county commissioners and county courts that want to stop it?
Do you or do you not think that my county has a vested interest in a safe and secure border where legal trade can traverse, where people can traverse safely and legally as well?
Your county may be doing great, but what about the county that's not yours that does not want these units operating in there?
Which county is that?
I'm saying now or in the future.
Well, which county is that?
I just answered your question. What more do you want?
Which county is hostile to this right now?
I'm saying there could be in the future, and I think this is important. Right now, DPS does not have to coordinate. It's silly that you're thinking that removing this is going to make no collaboration. They collaborate. They have fusion centers, just like you said. They're going to use all the same tools that they currently use.
And we do these things in a collaborative way. The nature of this amendment is to send a message to communities like mine that we do not care about your opinion. We do not care about public input and participation in this process with a new unit being stood up in our jurisdictions. And if we're going to do this, we should do it in a way that brings everybody to the table in the most amicable way possible. And so the only way I can read your amendment is we want them to know we don't care what they think. We're going to do this anyway.
And I'll tell you that I'm sorry that you read it that way. My intent of the amendment is to ensure that no county says no to a border protection unit going to the border to enforce border protection for Texans, period.
And I understand your intent. I have no other way to read this than as cutting out public participation for a community like mine. Appreciate you bringing it, but I think the better way to do things, particularly with law enforcement, is to invite and integrate things in a collaborative measure where the more people that participate, the better. You've heard of the term community policing?
I have.
Right? And the theory behind community policing is when you have a great, healthy relationship between the law enforcement and the community they come from and they serve. And this is a new unit being stood up that has never been stood up before. And the opportunity for the public to participate, I can wait for you to finish.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
The opportunity for the public to participate and be engaged and involved in it was built into the bill through the provision as it came to the floor today. And so, as someone who has seen, by the way, one of the safest communities in the country of its size, year after year after year, the city that I'm from, despite all of the rhetoric about my community, it is one of the safest in this nation of its size every year, year in and year out. That is because there is a healthy and good relationship between the law enforcement and the public that they serve. So I see this component of House Bill 7 as a key component of preserving that and not being hostile to it. In what way would you disagree with having a collaborative measure for our local government to be involved in this?
I'll state it simply, kind of what I said last night. We had people in politics that wanted to defund the police. And right now at the border, there's some people doing some amazing things.
I'm not here for catchphrases.
Let me finish.
Tell me what's going on for real.
There's amazing things happening at the border, but I'll tell you, as a nation, we're failing miserably. And what I'm saying through this amendment is no county can say no to a border protection unit to protect Texans and Americans. There's nothing else to imply from my amendment other than that if there's a county that it decides they don't want this unit there, I'm saying that we're coming and we're going to protect your community. And if you're
and we don't care what you think about it.
Well, hold on. If you're an elected official that says you don't want it, you don't want to protect your community, we're going to protect it anyway.
Yeah, I think I understand your point, trying to be respectful. To say that a community like mine doesn't care about safety and security or somehow would thumb their nose at safety and security, it is a reality that we live every day. And the border and immigration, the situation with border and immigration in our community is very complicated. And it's not a black and white issue. It's not just about stacking troops up on the border.
The gentleman's time has expired.